Nobody gets married planning for divorce by any stretch.
And I feel like finances and these type of challenges can completely destroy someone.
Fitting into somebody else's box and definition of what a good life was. And I said, screw that. When we go through crap, it can either make us better or bitter.
Welcome to Keep Hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Morgan Murray. Morgan, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Aaron, I'm so glad to be here.
You know, I was wondering how this was going to go. A guy from New York, a lady from Lexington, Kentucky. Accent is not so strong, but I'm sure it's going to come on very shortly.
Yeah, just wait.
And then I found out a very important piece of information. Your husband is from New York. Not real New York, but some New York. And we will take, us New Yorkers, we will take
what you can
whatever
get.
A little bit of New York, except for his football preference. We will take whatever we can from this guy.
Yeah, no, I always say I married into my Bills fandom, and I have been pretty consistently disappointed. So I think I'm a true fan now, right? Like I think to be a Bills fan, you have to be accustomed to suffering.
That's one of the most disrespectful things anyone has ever said to me on my own podcast. I'm a Jet fan, and you're telling me?
Oh shoot!
And you're telling me about disappointment? You're telling me about me about failure?
Right?
Come on! How I'm not loyal listeners. I'm not sure we could continue this episode. I mean, come on. But anyway, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you probably going to Buffalo once or twice in your life, which is not a great thing. So hopefully you did that in the summer. I don't want to dwell too much, and I always encourage everyone to read the bio and touch on that. I don't want to dwell too much on what I'll call the first part of your story. But if you don't mind, and sometimes this podcast is emotional, sometimes we hit chords, sometimes the last episode I cried at the end. You mentioned, or your specialty is divorce financial planning. Divorce and financial planning. And I imagine that there is a story there that involves, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Yeah.
Probably a divorce. Yeah. That I know. Probably a divorce. And probably some bad or lack of planning.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
If it's okay, I'd like to ask you to begin there, take us there, take us after the story, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
To the moment where you realized that you could turn that you had to, not could, you had to turn that into what you're doing now and how you're doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm totally an open book. And I think something I've learned in this line of work in particular is that authenticity breeds trust, hopefully. And so my clients generally, when they ask, I'll share my story and wherever, it can help somebody else. And so, yeah, I was married young, the first time, 22 years old, the day I graduated college. It was maybe not my finest timing. And nobody gets married planning for divorce by any stretch. And full disclosure, I have an English degree in technical writing. I did not intend to go into finance. And
People in Kentucky
I would
speak English?
What's that?
People in Kentucky speak English?
Oh, it's starting early.
Sorry.
Like some literature, okay?
Loyal listeners, she started with the Jets. She went there.
Okay, we're even, right. And to be honest, I chose that degree thinking I would go to law school. And I always joke because I read one book about what it was like being in law school and said, no, thanks. And so, got married young, was married for about 4.5 years. And in that time had my daughter. And so right at that mark, I guess it was around 4 years and she was 10 months old. My marriage ended. And that decision arguably was mine, but of course I won't go too much into it. But as any woman who has ever chose to leave her marriage with children can probably attest to, it's not usually the first option. It's about the 15th, right? Or the 100th, whatever reason or decision to kind of try to move forward. And so to your point, I did not plan to, I didn't go straight into this line of work afterward. I spent some time being a single mom and figuring things out. Now, I always joke that the best time to get divorced is when you're both broke because there's not much to lose. And so again, this is not the case with the bulk of my clients that I'm working with. They're walking away from a lifetime of intertwined finances. But I will say it was a time for me of truly living. I was working nonprofit at that time. Every single penny I spent mattered, and was the difference between the meals I ate at night. Just to be totally frank, if I'm eating like hummus and crackers over my kitchen sink versus going out with friends, so that I was living that paycheck to paycheck life and realizing that I also wanted to save. Now, my mom has been in this industry for a long time, but it was not part of the kind of the rhythm of my upbringing to be
Can you
preached
just tell
about
us what that
saving.
industry is? When you say your mother
Oh
was in what
yeah,
industry?
sure. She's a financial
Got it.
advisor,
Okay.
but she was an office manager in that industry first, and became an advisor about 10 years ago. So saw her kind of make that career jump later in life, and all that to say, it's like I still was having to teach myself every step of the way, and start fresh and rebuild. And so I would say that it was at the moment that I decided to pursue this job, being a financial planner. I had remarried at that point, and I have to give, and anybody who is an entrepreneur understands that, and especially women, you can correct me, but I think women, especially jumping into an entrepreneur type role, if they don't have some kind of backup plan or stable support at home, for me, it was a W-2 earning husband that allowed me
From Buffalo.
from
From New
Buffalo.
York. From New York.
Yeah, he's an HR guy.
That's what I'm saying. Like you realize
Yeah.
you marry someone from New York, you realize you have automatic, like your life has taken a positive turn that you never dreamed
Yeah.
of.
It's
Okay, great.
only
I'm just making
uphill.
sure.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you would not have the practice or the confidence that you have today. It's not just you have a supportive spouse. He's from New York. Like you married a New Yorker. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, I'm glad we established that.
I'm
But
good. Right.
I want to ask you a
Info.
question about that. I'm
Sure.
interrupting you, but I want to.
No.
You said something to me before we went live, which was incredibly powerful. I'm sure you used it before. Every marriage ends, right? Every marriage ends. It's I heard I saw a meme the other day that said that if you have two siblings, one will bury both, one will bury none.
Ugh.
Right?
Right.
That's life. I mean,
Mhm.
we can lie about the realities of life, but we're not going to help the listeners or ourselves move forward.
Mhm.
So understanding the reality that you're saying, that all marriages end. That's true.
Mhm.
I guess I'm just wondering, you speak to people before they get divorced, after they get divorced, when they're still happily married? Someone calls you and says, "Hey, I think this is going south. What do I need to do to prep?" Like,
Mhm.
I am just fascinated by
Yeah.
this because I'm in the risk business. So I believe that everyone needs to protect themselves and their risk. But like, prenups are prenups. But after that, I'm pretty sure that financially preparing for divorce is not a great measure of long-term relationship success.
Right. Right. And so, I intersect with people at every single stage that you just listed. And I have the capacity to serve them at those various steps, and the needs are very different. To your point, I had that conversation last week. She says, "Hey, I think it's over. I think things are going to start going south, and I don't know anything about this relationship financially. Where do I start?" Right? So that's sometimes the question.
But don't you think that we first I want to say I think what you're doing is amazing. I think that turning a difficult situation into something positive is always the way to go, and it is actually the definition of keep hustling, because it's saying that we're not going to let those negative things that
Yeah.
happen to us in life get us down. My aunt, she should live with me well, is 90 years old. She was my father, he should rest in peace, older sister. She's an incredible lady. She got divorced and felt that she got the short end of the stick in the court system.
Yeah.
So do you know what she did in her 40s with 3 children? She went to law school.
Love that so much.
And this woman, you should meet her. Everyone should look up. Shout out to Aunt Sandy, Sandra Rosenblum. You guys should all look her up just because she's a bad woman in the best possible way. My father's older sister. She rocks, Aunt Sandy. And, she obviously took a very difficult situation and made it something positive. It's a great story. She graduates law school at the same time that her youngest child graduates medical school. So it's like a fascinating, like
Amazing.
amazing hustle and grind. But not to take away your field, or not to knock your field, or not to put your field into delete it from careers and make it not a thing. Shouldn't people just be financially literate and financially sound and not allow themselves to be ignorant from the beginning?
Yeah, and I think that that's why.
What I'm saying is I understand that
Yeah.
people don't, and therefore that's why I'm happy,
Mhm.
and they should be happy that a service like yours exists. But like if you didn't get a traffic ticket, you wouldn't need a lawyer who if you weren't on
Mhm.
your if you didn't get a DUI, you wouldn't need a lawyer who specializes in DUIs. So if you're
Yeah,
just smart about not drinking and driving, that lawyer shouldn't have a job. So
yeah.
I believe that you probably have a unique perspective on financial planning, but it
Mhm.
really should be young couples before they get married. Both sides should be sitting down with you and saying, "Hey, let obviously," and I'm not. And by the way, I'm married, thankfully, for 15 years and happily married, and there's a delegation
Mhm.
of responsibilities,
Mhm.
and usually the finances are on one side or the other.
Yes, right.
But there's a big difference between I happen to handle the credit card bills, but my wife knows everything. She she puts the kids to bed and I handle the finances. But that doesn't mean, like we always talk about this, God forbid something happens,
Yeah.
there'll be a lot of difficult things.
Yep.
But the word ignorant
Mm.
wouldn't appear. So I want to go to, like, because this gets to my keep hustling and like why people are just, I think that a lot of people in 2026 are voluntarily
Mhm.
pained or
Mhm.
voluntarily, I don't want to say stupid, but you know what I mean?
Ostrich
Like,
effect. This is what I call it, the
yeah.
ostrich effect. They stick their head in the sand because it's like, I'd rather not know.
But like we have the internet, we have ChatGPT. Like
I know.
every young couple or any
Mm.
person who's working, making money, not making money, getting married, has a bill, is getting a mortgage, like you can. So why do you think people get there? And like, what can we do to inspire people not to be stupid, for lack
I
of a better
think
term?
it has to be, I mean, it's kind of a trite answer, but it has to be communication. There has to be business meetings in your marriage. I will just say out of the gate. And I think a lot of the women, especially, and now I work with men as well. So don't like, this is not, there's a lot of, let's say, rage bait around divorce finances and like, people that, are like, oh, you only want to take the guy's money, all that crap. No, none of that. That's not the way I approach this business. I want to equalize the playing field from, like you said, an awareness and education standpoint. So a lot of times I have women in particular who come into marriages where the spouse is maybe high earner, a level of complexity. Maybe he starts a business. So to your point, I think both of them have a responsibility to say, hey, babe, here's what's going on and here's what it means. Now, I think it should work both ways, right? Like if you didn't know what medications your kid was on, to if something happened to your wife that you're not able to continue care, right? You can apply that, I think, that standard practice across the board of roles in a marriage. So I think that is one way to avoid the ignorance.
And I think that if it's not, I would say that's a red flag. As a father of five, meaning
100%.
meaning again, and obviously people can be, and there are bad people in the world and evil people in the world and people that do bad things and people can hide things and lie and do all those things. But let's just
Mhm.
assume that the average marriage begins with a certain level of honesty.
Yeah.
When it begins with that level of honesty, if a person is not willing to, honesty means I won't lie to you.
Mhm, mhm.
But if I'm also not willing to expose
Yeah,
you,
yeah. Or withhold. Right, right.
right? Meaning,
Yeah,
but it's hard to know what a person is withholding. That's my point.
yeah.
But if a spouse asks questions, like my wife knows, I'm a second generation insurance agent. She unfortunately knows more about insurance than she'd like to.
Mhm,
But obviously there are nuances about my business, and either she's an occupational therapist, and nuances about her business that I don't
mhm.
understand.
Yep.
But I know that she's an occupational therapist, and that she makes a certain amount of money, and she knows she knows what I make, and our tax return. We go through it together, and we go through all these things, and I feel like the start of this conversation, even though we're 13 minutes in, is if your child or you are contemplating a relationship with someone who is not forthcoming with that information, again, if they're going to lie to you, I'm even willing to grant that as they're a bad person, they lied to you. But if you
Sure.
try
Yeah.
to have the conversations and they're not willing to have those conversations,
Yeah.
that should be a red flag.
Mhm.
And people should, and one of the things that we should be doing is encouraging young people to have these conversations.
100%. And then build it into the rhythm, the cadence of your life, right? Because you're going to look up in the trenches of raising a family and be like, oh crap, wait, what's happened? And everybody's doing their own thing. And again, and unsurprisingly in my marriage, I am the CFO, right? I am the one who is now
I
he has
mean, he
certain
is
things with
from
the credit
Buffalo.
cards.
He is
He
from
does,
Buffalo, so like, he's not a real New Yorker. If he's a
I
real New
mean,
Yorker, like, he would be the
I
CFO.
can't wait to go home and say, babe, we talked a lot about you
That's a
in
come
this
come.
conversation today.
No, but
He's
what I'm
getting
saying is,
pumped.
but the point I'm making is,
Yeah.
it's not like your husband asked you a question about the personal finances. You're the CFO, right? It's like the CEO. The CEO is not the CFO, but if the CEO
Mhm.
wants the information, the CFO's got to give the CEO the
Gotta have it.
information,
Yep.
and the employee who's in the accounting department also has to have it.
Yeah.
And I, and the reason why I'm bringing this up as it relates to this podcast in particular, and the idea of keep hustling, is that very often I've been privileged in these conversations to talk about how people can keep hustling, how people can
Mhm.
keep pushing themselves forward.
Mhm.
And learning about you and speaking to you, and then kind of the next place I want to take this conversation is, it's really hard to keep hustling if you have a huge derailment.
Yeah.
And I've spoken many times on this podcast, and many of the people who have inspired our listeners have said, life has bumps, but there's a huge difference between a bump or highway traffic and your car
Mhm.
breaking down on the side of the road and you having to walk.
Yeah.
And I feel like finances and these type of challenges can completely destroy someone
Yeah.
to the point where they're not stuck where they are.
Mhm.
They're way back where they were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. And so I think attitude matters. And this is something my husband and I both are on our second marriage. And we have just acknowledged, like, hey, when we go through crap, it can either make us better or bitter, period. And so for us, and I think for me at that phase of my life, yeah, I was having to rebuild. But to your point, I was in my late 20s. Everybody's figuring crap out still at that point. So, but now of course, the bulk of my conversations I'm having with women who have been married 25 years are, like you said, really don't just feel like they're starting this fresh new life, but they're going back. They're going back and having to really create a new foundation. But what I will say, and is that people all the time, when I say I work mostly with divorce, they're like, oh, it's so depressing. It's not. It's incredible to see the resilience and the dedication to saying, this is not the end of my life. And reality is, if a marriage ends after that many years, it's either, to your point about risk, it is not typically expected, especially for women maybe that have stayed home and like managed the house for X number of years. It is decimating from a financial standpoint, but they also see it as an opportunity to push forward and create a life for themselves that is something they wouldn't have had access to otherwise. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that
But
answers what kind of
wouldn't it be
speaks to it.
exponentially easier if they were just, again, like, I talk about this with insurance and planning all the time, and forgetting about this side of practice, even in standard financial planning, you have to have a certain level of understanding.
Yep.
And this may sound wrong, and I apologize to you and to the listeners if this comes out incorrectly, and we'll work through whatever I was trying
Yeah.
to say. I'm the host. This is not supposed to happen, but whatever. Like, at a certain point, it's like sometimes the victim is at fault.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if a person decides that they want to be ignorant, it's terrible, and they don't deserve to be victimized. That's not what I'm saying. And someone doesn't
Yeah.
deserve to be mistreated. But nobody who is of sound mind, marginal intelligence, should be totally ignorant of their finances, just like they
Right.
shouldn't be totally ignorant of their health.
Right. We are all villains and victims in our own story. Okay. Right. We acknowledge that in every probably facet. And so to your point, that is why a lot of the conversations I have carry a lot of shame, because there is recognition. But at the end of the day, what are you going to do? All we can do is move forward and make changes. But yes, to the women right now who are in the middle of a very happy marriage hearing this, or the men for that matter that are not the CFOs, do your due diligence. Take a second, take time to understand how your bills are paid, understand if you're freaking saving enough. Where's your risk management? All those things. I think, again, that's why financial planners, we will stay in business, because if nothing else, we help give peace of mind to audit your entire financial life and say, hey, major red flags here, blind spot over there, and bring it all together. So I think, yes, I do agree. Right. It sounds a little harsh, and I wouldn't be the lead in conversation with a woman whose 25-year marriage is ending. But I think that is why I love what I do, because they a lot of times already are there and understand that and say, okay, I want to do something differently from here on out.
Your bio. I pick a line from the bio, and then I'm going to ask you for some quick tips
Okay.
in the last few minutes we have. I'm going to read this, and I quote, I jumped into a financial advising career with very minimal guarantee it would work. I'm going to ... I had no choice, period. You know what I'm about to say? You're nodding. I, quote, burned the ships, end
Yeah.
quote, no turning back. Take us to that moment. That is keep hustling.
Yeah, there was no plan B. Starting this, and I don't know if this is a personality flaw, curse, privilege, or whatever, but when I go in, I go all in. And so for me, now, I would, the caveat being what we discussed earlier, I had income coming in, right? My family was fed, but I knew I would do whatever it took to build a business that was sustainable and fit the life that I wanted to lead. Because I'd already started to build a life prior that was not for me, was not what I wanted, and so I'd already tried that out, right? Fitting into somebody else's box and definition of what a good life was. And I said, screw that. Right. See, I almost used my go-to F word there, but I don't want you to have to go through the bother of beeping me. But yeah, I said, I don't want to live that way anymore. That was kind of the mindset.
Can I ask you the top 3, 5, either things that people should do or shouldn't do when they're young and thinking that one day they might want to get married, and when they are newly married? Take me from 18 or 20, graduating college, whatever. But because I feel like a lot of this conversation begins before the relationship.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think it's maybe not true that you have to have all your financial ducks in a row to be able to healthily move forward in a young marriage, right? I don't care if I see people figuring it out together and married, but I think, like I said, being able to communicate regularly and having that rhythm built in. So, and then also, then if you're alone and not in a relationship tracking toward marriage, being aware, taking time to understand your paycheck, taking time to understand how your insurance functions, being curious. One of my big things is that to stay curious, right? And even in, again, our line of work, I think curiosity is a measure of care. But in your own life, if you don't take time to ask the question, you're never going to have an answer. And again, you might be in 25 years in some hot water having a conversation with me, figuring out what just happened. So I think that's the biggest thing that comes to mind.
I also think, sorry to interrupt, but I also
No,
think
go
that
for it.
knowing which ducks you don't have in a row is a thing, right? Like knowing, hey, by the way, I have a lot of student
Yes.
debt, or knowing that I
Yes.
want to become a doctor. I'm gonna do it like, and I understand that therefore
Mm-hmm.
it's not together. My
Yep.
stuff is not together,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm not going to say that it is together when it isn't, and I'm
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
going to say that it isn't together when it is.
Right.
And I think that that's, I try to stay away from politics. I'm not going to get into the student loan thing. I'm not going to get into whether college is worth it or not worth it, or
Sure.
4 years, all that. But the ramifications of those decisions, getting a
Mm-hmm.
degree, not getting a degree, taking on debt, not taking on debt, going to graduate school, not going to graduate school, getting married before you're in university, in college, and after you're in college, when you're in grad school, not when you're in grad school,
Yep.
having a kid when you're in all of those things. Like, I remember, you just reminded me that when, I don't know what it was like in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, but we had this thing. It was called COVID-19. It was a virus. It was
We had it. Yeah.
right.
It hit
And
us.
New
Yeah.
York was pretty serious. And New York
Right.
City was
Right.
pretty serious. And I remember saying, my wife and I sitting down, I'm going to be totally honest, over a serious beverage.
Mm-hmm.
We had 4 children at the time. 1 was not in school, and 3 were going to be in this, Zoom school thing.
Yeah.
And I don't remember which one of us said it to the other. She's much more, wise than I am, so probably her. Like, we don't know what this is. Nobody knows what this is. But like, we're in it together, and like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever rocks the boat's rocked. But and the reason why I bring that up is knowing that the boat is rocking is also valuable. You don't even need to have the solution. But I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of times in these, especially in these types of financial conversations,
Mhm.
one person thinks everything is great. The other person is sitting there saying everything is terrible.
Yeah.
And that's what creates the friction, when at least if we both know it's terrible, if we both know we're struggling, we both know we need this to work out, or it's not working out, or we both,
Yeah.
or if
Yeah.
this works out, the finances are going to go in this direction. If it doesn't, it
Mhm.
doesn't, or it's going to be a
Yeah.
rough 6 months, whatever. Like, just knowing that knowing that it's falling apart is also great for a
Right, and I
relationship
think
if you
but then
want it to work.
having the vision on the other side is, what does calm waters look like, right? What does that feel like for us? And having that awareness in yourself, and then being able to enter a relationship where you can kind of find out, that is can be a deal breaker, right? If their vision of financial independence, which is kind of is the new retirement, right? It's like, what does financial independence look and feel like? If you all are in two separate universes of that, like that can be, I don't know, just some that can create some awareness. And I think if you're comfortable enough at that point, like I said, before you're actually committed and married to a person, like those, and even if you are, right, it's never too late to have those conversations. So to your point, just having a reality check over and over again is vital. At least I see what happens when they don't, I should say. Man, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, there is something I thought about with keep hustling. The concept is that even there is a reality in this line of work where I am building this plane as I'm flying it a little bit, not to mix too many metaphors, but I think that is what has been so exciting for this. And I would just say, if anybody is in the financial industry looking to dive into a niche, it's a terrifying thing to do. And I am so glad I did, because it has just brought this new purpose and honestly, opportunity for learning that I never would have had otherwise. I went independent as well. My story, I started with a large national brokerage firm and joined an independent team that allowed me to do this work. And that was, again, the most terrifying, I always say, outside of getting divorced, leaving that company
You did it
was the
again. You did it
second
again.
most.
You're like, I'm
I
doing it
did.
again.
Man, yeah. No, it was terrifying. So I just would say that to anybody in this,
But you were able to do it because you had a New Yorker behind you.
you got it.
Okay,
Like I
good.
said,
I'm glad we established that.
yeah, I'm in. You're good.
Okay, cool.
Good victim.
Thank you for the insight. I really appreciate it. As you know, we have a closing tradition on this podcast that we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational or inspirational quote. And with that, I'm going to say, Morgan Murray, thank you again for being here.
Yeah.
And the floor is yours.
Everyone wants to be great until they realize what greatness demands. And I might be fudging it a little bit, but that's from Joshua Medcalf, my most favorite book, and my husband's. He reads it every morning with his Bible. Is Chop Wood, Carry Water. Super small, straightforward, easy book. But it is. I go back to it, right, to check the road signs along the journey when things feel hard or isolating, or just when I start to question myself, I go back to that. And that it's the mundane, right? It's the mundane practice of being great that actually gets you on the other side. So that's kind of my go-to.
Thank you. Morgan, this has been awesome.
Thanks, Aaron.
Send regards to New Yorker husband.
I will.
Tell him he's got a friend in me.
Okay.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.